Are we? Yeah, that's where we more or less start. So, a little bit to my background. I'm actually originally a surveyor, so I make cadastral maps. That's what I studied. And part of surveying is photogrammetry. And I was very lucky when I studied. I had a certain Dr. Helmut Schmidt, and nobody of you has any clue of who that guy is. That's only the guy who developed all the photogrammetry for the V2 rocket in Second World War. He developed, at that point in time already, all the matrix calculations that we finally could calculate actually in the 70s. He was responsible for the complete measurement of all US military rocket programs, and he was responsible to map the moon. And he missed the Nobel Peace Prize by, I think, a few months, because he actually made a network around the Earth with balloons and measuring with photogrammetry the position around the Earth with stars, and he got an accuracy of about 8 to 10 meters. And at that point in time, they came out with Doppler, and that was a little better. So he missed it just a little bit. Of course, he was too brilliant for us. We understood nothing while we were studying for him. But I was lucky. I was actually able to get some of his papers that he made for the proving grounds in the States. But he fascinated me for photogrammetry. That was the bad thing he did, huh? And then I actually worked as surveying. I measured tunnels, bridges, huge towers and stuff like this. And I got a fellowship from the Ohio State. And there I did a master's in geodetic science. Geodetic science is the shape and form of the Earth. You have no clue why that is important. That's very important. If you have a submarine and shoot out a missile as some friendly nation, that missile flies according to the geoid. And there's a certain country in the east, when you shoot there, you don't have the geoid on that country. So there's some smart people who developed how to measure that by the distance between two satellites, and that they were in this university, and that's why they had a lot of funding at that time. But there are sometimes strange applications. And then I went there personally because there was a special professor there, Dr. Armin Grün, and about a year after I came there, he went to the ETH Zurich. And studying in Switzerland and the States, when you are a research assistant, there's a slight difference in salary. In Switzerland, they really pay you. And the most interesting stuff for me was that I basically had unlimited funding for my research. That sounds nice, huh? You just buy whatever you want. And my job was to take photogrammetry from analog photogrammetry. So we used photogrammetry with film cameras, film 23 by 23 centimeter or glass plates to the digital age. And I started with a camera that had 384 by 512 pixels. Yeah, you can imagine, you don't even get this anymore. Yeah, but the price tag was still very good. It was about $300,000 today. Yeah, so you can imagine from where we went with technology at that point in time to today. And that's why we can do today things, honestly, that when I did my PhD, we said we'll never be able to do this. And today we can do these computations in real time. And when I finished, I was also visiting professor in Australia. I almost stayed there. It was too nice in Sydney, living in Bondi Beach, and then taking your mountain bike to go to University of New South Wales and come there at 10 o'clock in the morning, have lunch and leave at 3. That was a real nice life. Besides, the people there are really nice. Then I was also in France, and I published quite a few articles in photogrammetry. I also made some patents. And then I stopped to do patents once I realized they're just very good instructions for all our competitors to learn what we do. So everybody who has a desktop scanner and industrial scanner today uses basically my calibration techniques for structured light systems. We use something better by now, but at least they had a good basis to start this. And before I came into dental, I worked basically in industrial metrology, and we measured components this size. We actually measured atomic bombs, we didn't know. We measured Formula One cars at full speed to see how the wings deform or how the tires deform with high-speed cameras, 500 frames in seconds. So we had a lot of fun. And I fell into dental by accident in 2006. I had no clue that this exists. Yeah, it was only the guy who gives you pain when you go to him. So a lab bought a desktop scanner. And what they did was bars. They only did bars. We had no clue how that worked. I couldn't even put the teeth back into a dental model at the point in time. What is all that stuff? So we started to understand a little bit what they did. And we developed desktop scanners to measure extremely accurate on models. But it was absolutely clear to me we have already lost the war. The model has not much to do with it in the mouse. And already in 2007, we had discussions about how can we do this better. And one of the things was, yeah, you could do photogrammetry in the mouse. Why not? It actually has been done a long time before by other people using photogrammetry for dental. Thanks God we didn't start then, because we didn't understand enough how to do this, and the market was definitely not ready at that point in time. I mean, if I would have come to you at that time with photogrammetry, it would have been hard. Somebody actually did. PIC came out very early, and the adoption was very, very difficult. But some fundamental things for us were, we developed desktop scanners and methods and testing methods to basically have a zero failure rate. We still sell desktop scanners to some people who have the money to buy them. And we have since 2008 with a very large milling center, which is in Belgium, the States, in Australia, and in Japan, zero failures on all the bars today. So we know how good you have to be in order to have zero failures. And because we know that this is possible on models, we would like to do the same thing in the mouse. Just on the mouse, life is a lot more difficult, yeah? On the model, you're in a temperature-controlled environment. You have people who put the scan bodies very clean, very nice. It's all very easy. So that's also, we are right in the topic. We would like to measure here. First problem, when you open the mouse, this thing is not rigid. That sucks. You have mandibular flexure. That exists. And I think if you read all the literature, they tell you should take everything in rest position. Because when you open it, we have literature is not very clear, but you see 0.4 to over millimeter deformation. So today we want to do everything with intraoral scanners. We open the mouse as far as we can, and we measure with an intraoral scanner. That's absolutely useless, but because what we're measuring is already completely wrong. Yeah? And unless somebody tells me it's a mathematical model how you undeform that, I'm waiting on that one. We also see it, because if you look, why is our occlusion with an intraoral scanner often so bad? Not because we measure bad when it's closed here. Here we certainly have about 20 micron accuracy, but the occlusion is very often very, very bad. And we get better occlusions with the CBCT technique. Yeah? We take a CBCT before, we take it after, we align the bones. But that's only 10th of a millimeter. So why is this more consistent better? Yeah? We do understand why. So the measurement environment is one thing. Oh yeah, I've almost forgot that. Dental is a beautiful area. I can lie to you about photogrammetry as much as I want because you have no clue. Sorry. And some people do this. And I have a beautiful video here from us.
Calibration of the big camera reaches a position accuracy of a few microns at a measuring distance of up to 35 centimeters.
That video is in the dental market since a long time. And there have been also KOLs out there saying, oh great, how beautiful this is real proof. If you know what you're looking at, you see within a few seconds that this is bullshit. Sorry, that's not my mother tongue English, so I don't know these words. If you look at the numbers here, you see already that it varies by over 10 micron. But you have here the reference. The reference is 10 micron. And there's a fundamental law in industry that if you want to compare something and prove something, it must be at least 3 times better. So the best thing that you might accept is 30 micron. And 30 micron is not 3 micron. Yeah, a couple micron is a different number. if you know the industry, and you know actually that this is not produced by PIC, you just remember that a few years before, the manufacturer actually made the same video. And this is the video from the manufacturer.
The position accuracy of a few hundreds of millimeters at a measuring distance of up to 35 centimeters.
So apparently we can tell you anything, even a factor 10 off, and it goes. That's rather disastrous, but it even gets worse. You have peer-reviewed scientific literature. In 2020, they claimed photogrammetry, that was actually ICAM. If you look at the paper, you can see that the pictures of 300 micron precision. Who thinks that you will get a structure in the mouse if you have a precision of 300 micron? Nobody? Absolutely impossible. Yet they knew that about 40 miles away from them there was somebody using ICAM. And the worst thing is they didn't take the data, but they didn't put that in the paper. They sent us a model to Europe, we measured it, we checked the data, and you really think I'm so stupid I would give out such shit data? Probably not. So the reality is we provide, as you know, from photogrammetry, we give XML data with coordinates. They didn't use that. They used the STL. They went into geometric and extracted from the STL coordinates, and that can go completely wrong, and that they're not the only ones who fell into the trap. And they published it. But they were even told by one reviewer, which I shouldn't know, that their data is probably wrong, and they still published it. The reality of the data is here. The precision is 4.8, 9.7, 2.2. We were not that good at that time, actually, as we are today. We're much better today. We're actually much better today than originally hoped to be, yeah, which is very, very nice. So that is a big issue. Most of the literature in dental about precision, accuracy, and you even speak about trueness, is complete garbage when you come from metrology. I don't write about zygoma implants because I know I don't understand much about it. And then there are other techniques how to analyze data, and I will show you, for example, if you have certain errors and you check the distances up here, you will simply not see them. I will show you data where we introduce errors of 100 micron, and this technique shows you errors of 13. So if you know your system is not great, you can also select techniques where the errors don't show up. Now, I'm a scientist, I try to find errors, yeah? And then we can do marketing and try to show that everything is perfect, but that's not really the purpose of things. Or people, they make claims, they're simply not substantiated, and they're even dumb enough to provide you the data to check it. Yeah. So, Dr. Armin Mitzayan, he published, this is 1,000,000% proof that the elite intraoral is at least as good or maybe even better than an ICAM. And in his video, he talks about this and says, yeah, this has to do because you cannot place the scan board at the same location. That is correct. If you know how to look at this data, and I do know, you see immediately this has nothing to do with the position. This has to do that scan body has moved in the direction. And it has changed by 30, 40 micron here, a little distance. So you can imagine that here you will have something huge. And it's really huge. It's 0.5 millimeter. So the elite data is 0.5 millimeter different to the ICAM, and I think everybody here will believe that's not the problem of the ICAM. Yeah? So people simply use the fact that you're not all metrology experts, and I don't hold that against you, but I hold it against the people who use that in order to lie to you, basically. So we want to measure, and I will only speak about implant interfaces because for us it doesn't matter very much. We want to find out where the multi-unit is, where an implant is, and that would be very nice. It would be always like this. And I spoke about the measurement conditions and mandibular flexure. But the mouse has another problem. We're not allowed to deep freeze our patients to take measurements, and we're not allowed to put them at stable temperature, would be 20 degrees centigrade. And what you have just seen here is what happens to a scan body when you put it in the mouse. It will heat up, yeah, in Celsius from 20 to 37. And when we made our ICAM bodies, we thought about this, especially when you think you will put the stuff in an autoclave, where things get absolutely brutal. And we know, because in our software we compared the data that we measure on the ICAM body to the data that we have from the calibration, and we know it's not the same accuracy in the mouse, even if everything is clean. So yes, we do realize, even though it's very, very small, this is only 3 micron, we do realize there's an issue. But that's also why an ICAM body will not live forever, because when you put it in an autoclave, the stunk is really suffering. Yeah. But then you take, for example, a scan body from PIC, which is out of thermoplastic. The movement here is already 18 micron. Here we had another 5, and they have the target somewhere here. So this target is probably moving by 20 micron when you put this in the mouse. And then you claim you get micron accuracy. Doesn't work. And the worst thing, you don't really know where you are. This takes about 32 seconds to a minute to warm up. That takes a little longer to warm up. And then we have here the specialists with the horizontal scan bodies. You could use that stuff as a thermometer if you want. Yeah, if you measure accurate enough, you can measure the temperature. Each scan body, 25 millimeter length, expands by 10 micron, which means across the arch you have 20 micron. Yet they claim they have a precision of 6 micron. If they would really have a precision of 6 micron, they would realize here that something is wrong. But even worse, you don't know if this expands linearly. If you look at the cross section here, you have a good chance that this actually deforms. And then you put in an autoclave, you don't want to know numbers, how much this expands. But the other devices, you know, OptiSplint, it's also aluminum. You put in the mouse, that changes already by 20 micron. And then the instruction is, yes, you can take it out and put in a desktop scanner and you get 4 micron accuracy. Huh? That was told to the public 2 years ago here at the booth. How do you get to 4 micron accuracy if it deforms by 20 just because of temperature? So it's very, very challenging if you look at this. So here, it's actually something I had absolutely no literature in dental about this. I know about this because we had to do measurements in industry where you basically couldn't even touch the object anymore. It gets very, very unpleasant and difficult. And in many projects, the temperature is the limiting problem. So you measure, for example, an automotive component in micron level. There's a room that's temperature controlled. There's only one operator in there because we dissipate heat and we need to control the temperature this precisely. But we also have to think about this with what we put on the mouse because the structure will also change. And you see titanium is very little, aluminum is already twice that, and when you take thermoplastics, it's 6 times more that it will expand. So we're still courageous, we still want to measure in the mouse, and then we start to look at other realities. So that we get clean scan bodies in the mouse, that's a pipe dream. We will have blood on them, we have here suturing threads. We have sometimes situations where they're close to each other, so you must place one and then place the other one. Hope that the client doesn't take it out and put it on the same position because that doesn't work. You cannot put the scan body back on the same position. But also what you see here, we'll have the tongue pushing against it. So why did we take titanium? We could just have taken aluminum or plastic. Titanium has one huge advantage. You screw this down just a little bit, that scan body doesn't move, and that's essential. And you know it. Who has an ICAM here? Too many people, huh? You know, yeah, a few icons here. You torque them hand tight, the thing doesn't move. That's how it should be. So you imagine you have a very long scan body here. You need to tighten that thing down until the screw breaks. And that's another problem. We know even here, we sell a lot more screws than scan bodies because people are not perfect. Errors happen. And so they tighten it and they destroy the screw. So a lot of issues. Now, trying to scan this with an intraoral scanner, if you come from industry, you say you're crazy trying to do this. This thing is transparent. It changes while you scan. You don't do it. We developed scanning technology with Daimler Chrysler. We know all the problems they have. You would like to have a diffuse, reflective, non-transparent, and non-shiny surface, yeah? You see anything like this here? I don't see anything like this here. So this is the real challenge, and we see this when we take the gingiva with the intraoral scanner. We have huge differences to the photogrammetry, yeah? And thanks God that only impacts where we have the gingiva and we get the implant positions from the iCam. So basically we should just give up, go home and cry and say, forget this is too difficult. But that's the special stuff we love to do. When you don't know if it will really work, it gets really interesting for us. And so we decided to develop iCam. And there are a few interesting things there that we will also talk about. Photogrammetry. Everybody does photogrammetry, and now just grammetry is also used to give some hint that that might be actually laminate, but the laminate is with the neighbor. Photogrammetry really took off in First World War. They had to map trenches. The British, that's just a number I know, they took 5 million images in the First World War to map the trenches. That is not much later, and you see here an aerial camera. At that point in time, we didn't compute anything. They basically had analog optical instruments, a lot of them, of course, Swiss again, precision mechanics and optics. That is Wild Herbruck company actually still exists to do this. And when you do this, it might look like this. You take endless amounts of images here and in this direction. And when you study photogrammetry, like I did, in the first year, they explain you this doesn't work. Period. It simply doesn't work. And what do you have to do? You have to introduce additional information, which is called control points. Today, you can go on the internet and look at guidelines for drone mapping, and they will tell you exactly the same thing. So, in a network like this, you would have to put XYZ here, XYZ on all the corners and at certain distances, like typically I think 5, 6 of these images, and in between you have to control the Z. So even with photogrammetry, you have the similar problems as with intraoral scanners. Stitching just doesn't work. Yeah, doesn't work with this either. So if you look now at what the current intraoral photogrammetry system on the market does, it's even worse, because here you have a relatively wide opening angle. They have an opening angle of basically nothing. And when you ever did industrial photogrammetry, you know that that gets very, very, very difficult, yeah, because it gets very, very wobbly. So that is aerial photogrammetry. This is the basis of intraoral photogrammetry. There's nothing new. We're only doing this since 100 years, and we know since 100 years when it works and when it doesn't work. But for that, you should know photogrammetry. Industrial photogrammetry, or in photogrammetry, we call it close range. Yeah, it's a definition. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's everything less than 300 meters. Traditionally, what we do is we have targets. We put them on the object. We put a lot of targets on the object, and we take a lot of pictures. And then we throw this in some software. That's like black magic. And then you get some data. Bad mouse say that's me, but you see I still have a lot of hair left, so I don't know when that will happen. And these are typical applications that we do. So you see here car crash testing. These guys actually destroyed 2 cars a day. And when the first Cayenne came on the road, they had 100 Cayennes into the wall. That's about what automotive manufacturing security actually costs. And what we do is we put these targets here. Then in this test, actually, they had a truck at 80 kilometers an hour driving into the side of this car. Supposedly, the driver would have survived. But the noise in the crash test size is so bad that you don't survive almost. It's really horrible. And then you have a banana. So what we do is we do a measurement before, we do a measurement afterwards. We compare them, and we see these vectors that you see here. They have released 2 pictures of a crash car ever. You know why? You have too many lawyers in the United States. And outside the crash site, every car that goes out is covered, 100%, because there's a place where photographers could take pictures. So it's one of the best guarded secrets, is crash cars. But the important thing is, from a photogrammetric point of view, we take like 100, 120 images all around it. We do the number crunching, and we can get an accuracy of about 50 micron over a car. That would be microns in the mouse. I'm not telling you we'll measure 2 microns in the mouse yet. Huh? The important thing to see is we can take pictures from wherever we want in just about all these situations. And whenever you look, you will see this, these here, this here, you don't see it here. There's always a scale bar out there. Photogrammetry does not know the size of the car. That car for photogrammetry could be 5 milliliters or 50 meters, we don't know. The scale bar, that gives the size. So when somebody tells you to use an iPad or an iPhone to do photogrammetry in the mouse, you have to look where's the scale bar. Otherwise, you don't really know the size. And LiDAR doesn't give you an accuracy that you need. Yeah. So the approach is very, very interesting, but there's some challenges, and that's also why we don't do this. We simply do something outside where we know what's happening. So, important, we have a field of view that's bigger than what we want to measure, and the bigger is actually important, because in optical systems, measurement systems, the error on the border, they're horrible. That has to do with how you calibrate. You cannot really recover it perfectly there. And that is true for photogrammetry, and that's true for scanning. In industrial scanning systems, we actually throw away the data on the border. Yeah? Now we have applications we don't need that accuracy, and we would like to have a similar setup. And in these conditions, we actually use what is called stereophotogrammetry. Stereophotogrammetry is 2 cameras. Yeah, I'm not nice with you guys. You have to do a lot of imagination. There's actually a second camera here. Yeah, you have to believe me. But these cameras are on a stable, rigid basis, so you know the distance between them. And in this case, you don't need a scale bar, because the cameras give you the size of the object. But what is interesting here is, this is early 90s again, 94, 95. We had the mathematics to calibrate the stereophotogrammetry system on each measurement, and then we basically compute the scale bar. Now, how many stereophotogrammetry systems in dental can calibrate? Yeah? 95 to today is a few years. They don't even have the technology that we had at that point in time. Yeah? And you need to calibrate. Why? Because the smallest change in there will affect your results in object space. And there's an important thing to understand. We speak about true photogrammetry. I will try to explain actually why we speak about true photogrammetry, because it's a combination of things. With stereophotogrammetry, the precision in and out, so in and out of your mouse when you are in the front, depends on this angle. And if you have a relationship between 1 and 3, this coordinate gets 5 times worse. Now there's somebody who's really smart out there, he takes something here and then takes something there and claims that solves the problem. Well, there's something called error propagation. So if you take another measurement from here and you take the average of the two, it means that you will get overall 3.6. Yeah? So you will never be able to get rid of it. Yeah? Factor 3 is quite a bit. Yeah? It's a car that goes 100 or 300 miles an hour. Slight difference. What we do is we cheat a little bit on what you can do. We push it beyond the limit because you would like to have ideally 90 degrees. Now we tell you have to rotate that icon body so we can see from here and here. And if we could go far enough, we can go beyond 90 degrees, but somewhere you cannot rip out the lips. So the big difference is we do the scaling with fundamentally stereophotogrammetry systems, but we even have 4 cameras for completely different reason. And then we integrate all the information from all these views. And that is mathematically slightly more complex. The software for a stereophotogrammetry system, I can still write this to do probably in 3 to 6 months. The software to do this, just to get to initial bundle adjustment, if you really know your stuff, it's 3 to 4 years. And then what we did here in order to get reasonable computation times was only attempted by another university and they actually failed. Yeah? So we were just a little bit more lucky than those guys. And that is really what we call true photogrammetry. So it is, we use a 2 or 4 camera system and we do this movement. So when you learn ICAM, you do this for the calibration. And we calibrate outside the mouse. Why? I've shown you the situation afterwards. You cannot rely on anything once you measure in the mouse. The things are dirty, they are hot, you have no clue what's happening. So we make sure that the system is perfectly before we start the measurements. And Switzerland is a democracy, but we are not a democracy. We tell you what we do and how it works. So we force you to calibrate before each measurement. And then we do this movement here. So we do the orbital motion. And it's really important that you try to go from as far as possible to this. And the nice thing with the targets here is you look across the arch, you can capture this very good from here already, and you can capture the same one from here. So even if they're very, very close together, you can do measurements. Yeah? And we did recently testing with some, we tested OptiSplint and we tested the IO Connect. And we have models you can't even get it on. There's one of them is here, the scan bodies are too close together. We just put everything in and we measure and it's easy. There's another aspect. When you come from industrial metrology, the idea that Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C or Lady C gets different results, or that we have different results on a Monday, Wednesday or Thursday, that simply doesn't exist. If you go to Porsche and you say I have a measurement system but people get different results, they will simply send you home and tell you, well, come back in a few years once you understand metrology. So that doesn't exist. So what we did do, we took away all your rights, sorry. We look where you took a measurement, and then we look how you're moving. And as soon as you have moved far enough, then we accept another measurement. And when you move far enough, we accept another measurement. That's why I cannot measure better with an ICAM than you. I developed that stuff, but I cannot do anything better than you. And it's amazing. We recently looked at some data from a client. They took an upper jaw, 10 users that have never used ICAM before, and the difference between the 10 measurements is below 2 micron. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Yeah? But it was a healed patient upper jaw. And that's where we should be. Yeah? So this is why true photogrammetry is rather unique, and there's nobody else in the industry who does anything even close to that today. They will come one day, but it's complicated. This is what we see today on the market. So we have ICAM, We have stereo systems. I don't really know where to classify those guys. And then we have intraoral photogrammetry. Now here, there's a second thing we must understand. Most of these systems come from navigation. This system, which is sold as PIC, is not from PIC. It's from a German company, and they do guided surgery in bones. And for bone guided surgery, you don't need 5 micron. If you have tenths or 2/10 of a millimeter, that's more than plenty. They actually get to an accuracy of about 30 to 50 micron. They're really good. I know those guys. We basically studied together. Micromapper is the same as Navident. That was the design to do 100, 200 micron. And now it's supposed to do 5. Even they admit it doesn't do 5. But trying to do this is like claiming my bicycle will win the Indy 500. You know that's not going to happen. Yeah? So a lot of these systems were designed for something completely different and now used to do something they were not designed for. That doesn't work. Yeah? You cannot get a Fiat Cinquecento to go 300 miles an hour. Very, very difficult. These guys are absolutely amazing. So they write in the brochure, we are better than anybody else because we make a really small triangulation angle. I just told you before what a small triangulation does to your results. Yeah? And they don't even read brochures very well because they would know that our triangulation angle, if we don't move around, would be actually the same. But what they did is, we're about 250 millimeters away. Why? Because we need a big depth of field. And it's actually the same thing we used on our desktop scanner, so we get 70 to 100 millimeters depth of field, because you have a pterogrid all the way back. You need to measure in the front, you need to measure in the back, and you still need some room. They are 70 millimeters away. What happens with photography when you're 70 millimeters away? You have 0 depth of field. On intraoral scanners, you have a centimeter depth of field, approximately. So how is this going to work? Well, it doesn't work. Yeah? Try to do pterogoid with those. We know some people who tried that. Yeah? I think you gave up after 3 hours. Courageous guys.
Totally failed at our surgical course. Trying to take pterogoids for an hour. And I had to give up and only load
we
4.
didn't pick them up, and then we just sort of left them as an all-on-4. Yeah. And we'll try to pick up the pterogoids, and we'll use our items.
Yeah. So, and I already spoke enough of those guys. Basically, they have the same issue, but you saw another issue. And the fundamental issue with any intraoral scanner, you measure something that's completely wrong. Yeah. Scan bodies. So when we developed our desktop scanner, I spent actually 1 year. Apparently, I'm not very bright. It takes me 1 year to find all that stuff. But we spent 1 year optimizing our desktop scanner to get the accuracy that we wanted. And it's, again, another anecdote. So these people told me, hey, Horst, we want that you measure the model, we mill a bar, we put it on here, and we never want to see light between that. And no light between that means 10, 20 micron. And I basically told them as friendly as I am, you're full of shit, this will never work. Yeah, because I don't have a scanner that does 3 micron, you cannot produce to 3 micron. But it's very good, quite some time I'm actually wrong. And we got there. But we pushed the limit, and we pushed the limit, we looked at every detail. Why did we take a cylinder? You make these things on a turning machine, yeah? And you will have a perfect cylinder. The diameter might not be perfect, but you will get a perfect cylinder. And then you just have to make sure that this distance is correct. So we produced them with 10 micron tolerance. We even tried 5 micron tolerance, but the trash bin gets a little big at that point in time. And why do we take a uniform cylinder? Because every scanner assumes that it's measuring a flat surface in the pixel plus the 2 neighbors. So you need about 3 pixels theoretically horizontal, flat. I don't see anything flat here. That means, and that's really funny, a lot of people have been puzzling, why is the diameter that we measure always wrong? Well, it has to be wrong, yeah, because we're not observing the physics. So on a desktop scanner, what we do, we look that we take with the same angle and everything, symmetric measurements all the way around. And then of course we don't do an STL to STL fit, because if your diameter in the STL is not the same as what you have measured, you will have errors. So we know that our desktop scanner has not been accepted by any of the big milling centers as soon as we do the measurements in exocuts, reshape, or dental wings, because they don't get the same accuracy. We have never tested it before. We actually saw it last year. We're factor 3 more precise in measuring these things than when you do it in exocut. Yeah? So that is also not very helpful for any intraoral scanner that does all the stuff in exocut. But what is important to understand here is you need something long. You would actually want to have a very long scan body in order to get the direction of the implant. But you cannot get too long, because then even your desktop scanner will not measure very good up here. And our scan bodies have simply a flat top with no screw channel, no nothing. We used an integrated screw, and we also get from that the best repositioning of a scan body on the multi-unit there. So we measure from here to here, and I made a beautiful drawing there this morning. Basically, if you have here data, you have here data and here data. The center of all the data is somewhere here. And that's key in understanding. All your data will move around that point. So your angle errors will be wobbling around here. And if you go with this as small as that, even our desktop scanner cannot give you results that are good enough anymore. And then there's some people who come up with all shapes, sort of shapes for scan bodies, so they get recognized from different views. Well, you break every rule here, because you have surfaces that you will simply not get very good. Yeah, they have curvatures that you should never have. And then we come and attach horizontal scan bodies to this, and we basically kill everything that we ever had, because then you have here something where you lose the surface, and on top of this you have data which is completely wrong, because your exocut doesn't know that there's something. And if you look what's happening, the results are quite disastrous. We checked this last year for one particular horizontal scan body, and it does not really give you any results that are much, much better.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I understand that with photogrammetry, where the intraoral scanner is, we're just using that as a reference. But just in the iMetric software, where I do the alignment, if I use the iCam ref, when you do the auto matching, sometimes it'll go like this. So
Yep.
we're using the DES 5207 because when we press the points, it auto aligns much quicker. Can you give us a reason why of that?
That depends probably a lot on the data you get from the intraoral scanner, because some intraoral scanners have STL data in here. And our algorithms were all developed for excellent data. We developed them for our desktop scanner, not for junk data. That's why actually in other software you might easier get a result, and we see that sometimes we even have STLs that get exported from some other photogrammetry systems, and we try to align to them. Our software will say, no, that doesn't work. Yeah. So you always have to look what you have in here, and you have very often for intraoral scanners some other junk data inside, and then it simply fails.
That makes sense. So that means our intraoral scanner is not putting that exact geometry, so then we have to pick the point data to get it to align.
Yeah. Then you do the 3 points, and I even have seen data where that doesn't work, because you then you just look at the cross section here, and you will see there's some junk inside, and
so
our software doesn't like that.
So that makes sense. So, but then, so what would be the downside of using a desk scan body, because it just auto aligns better?
It really doesn't matter, because honestly, so that's very important. It's a very, very good question. A lot of people ask us, well, now we do the line with the intraoral scanner, and then we give you the numbers, and they're horrible. That has no impact on the implant position, because the implant position comes from the iCam. It will affect how good your gingiva fits to that implant position, and it might impact your occlusion. Yeah. And why is that often also so bad? It's not just because they are poor, because you have to open the jaw completely. Yeah. And we are going to show that also. You know, we show things where you open the jaw too much, and you actually shouldn't. And these are the prototypes for new training models. We will show you don't need to open the jaw that far with iCam. You really shouldn't, especially in the lower jaw. I don't even think that the upper jaw is stable. It's plates that are supposed to move against each other. But we are not there yet, I think, in our understanding of all the issues. Now, photogrammetry is not really different. It's very different in one respect, that if we see 3 targets all the way back here, we can already find the position and orientation of this. With a scan body, we can't. Yeah? We had a great desktop scanner. We could apply this to the patient. There's only one slight problem. We would have to chop the people in half, do the measurement, glue them back together, and that's where we had a problem. We didn't find the right glue there. Yeah? Because there's a fundamental rule again. If you measure this, you really need to get over 180 degrees. If you know industrial metrology software, how to measure a circle, a hole, you need to get over 180 degrees or it will fail. So that's why we decided to go for photogrammetry. Of course, we knew photogrammetry, so we thought that would be a lot of fun to develop. But that I cannot say officially. And it's probably not true because I had to pay for it out of my wallet. So we took a lot of targets. Why do we take a lot of targets? Because we know we will have dirt. And if you don't have enough targets, you will not be able to find the dirt. So if we have one target here, another target here, we can still see, oh yeah, there's something wrong. We don't use that data, and that's essential. Yeah. The other thing to understand also in photogrammetry is the most accurate is somewhere in the center of all the targets. And again, we have the same thing that we move. And we tested, for example, this scan body and this scan body, and we can see the difference in precision in the angle. Yeah? And also in the position down here. It will have very little impact on the Z, but you see it in the other coordinates. So if you start to lose all the targets up to here, of course the accuracy will also go down. That's just logical. We put here a little space because we see even on the multi-unit you will have something down there, you will have blood, you might have ginger and whatever. You can actually lose the bottom row and it will still work, but I don't recommend it. Yeah. Good.
If you don't mind, I did pick up a tip
Yeah.
from you. You said it, but I had to learn it through experience because sometimes when we have our students do that, I guess that's a problem on our part, but I guess it wasn't. Maybe I missed the information, but I've seen experienced clinicians and I see them their Facebook videos. When they start off the ICAM, they go really, really slow, so it picks up slow. I learned over the years that once I do that, I go left and right really, really fast, and I was always just thinking in my head that you're triangulating everything so you're getting the points. That's why it's important to get the vertex there. But I think a lot of clinicians who own the ICAM, I've seen them firsthand, they go really, really slow. But you said it today that I just picked up on to validate what we've been doing. Go really, really fast from point A to point B on the other side.
Not too fast, because if you go too far, we won't accept it.
Okay. Yes.
We are mean Swiss guys. So we actually take 3 measurements, and if the measurements are too far apart, we'll reject it and you get this orange line. So you apparently found the right speed, and if you go to the right speed, we'll accept the measurements, yeah? And that's actually what you should be doing. You should find the speed and just keep moving around. And with ICAM, because we don't have scan strategies and all these theories, you can go here and you can go back and you can go here if you want, you can go back. It will not have any impact on the results because photogrammetry, the bundle adjustment will always get to the same solution. Yeah.
So let me ask the second question. How come sometimes a clinician, or say one of my assistants, they'll do it and then nothing picks up after the calibration, then we restart and go, and I pick it up and we go and they pick up? Like, is it too slow also?
No, it's a tricky Swiss lady. So if the calibration is not perfect, we actually don't do any measurements. Yeah.
Okay.
And
How would you mess up the calibration?
huh?
I mean, unless it's calibrated, I mean, how would you mess that
The
up?
calibration cannot be perfect, and we have seen, we had 3 machines now which have been unstable. Yeah, and we are looking why they're unstable, and we know some reasons why they're unstable. Yep.
Is there like any tips for calibrating correctly so that it
Well, if the machine is stable. So we have seen machines where they calibrate like this and then they measure like this and it simply didn't work. And the poor people have been really frustrated. There are 2 in Australia and I think 1 or 2 in the States, yeah. And we got them back and I got my hands on it and we have spent weeks and weeks to find out. We have changed all our testing processes because we had a test and we thought we cover everything, but even Swiss are not perfect. Yeah, so now we have completely different processes where we actually check that. And the last batch of cameras that went to the States, they have been checked again there to see if something happens in transport. Because for us, this is a disaster. We claim to make a machine that all will work perfectly, and we have machines that didn't work at all. Yeah, so that can happen. And for the calibration, you should move not too fast. You should always move at a 30-degree angle, because what you don't want reflection on the calibration plate. When you go straight on the calibration plate, you will have reflections and you will not get good data. It's the same on the ICAM bodies. You should measure them with about 30 degrees. Then you have less reflections on them.
So I've learned that over the years, just talking to you and doing that, but is that communicated? Because I've seen people just go straight and I've had to do that.
We have that in the training now.
Oh, that is in the training now.
And the training is currently being completely revised. You might have seen that we have some companies selling iCams in Europe. And of course, since they sell it, and we cannot be as brutal that we say we simply speak English with everybody, they will need it in French and all sorts of beautiful languages. So we're making videos now with the model. So we hope that within the next quarter, we will ship with every iCamera model, with the data of the model, with the video how you do this, with the video how to align it in all sorts of languages. Because for videos, there's a very beautiful software, and I've seen Aya. You can stand up. This is one of our training people. She makes a lot of videos. So she spoke perfect German. And the mouse movements were German. And your German is not so great. No. Yeah. So it's really, with AI in some senses, it's absolutely fantastic. So we can have videos, and I think that will help a lot. But it's a lot of training, and I'm very happy about the feedback, because we see where we have holes in our training that we don't explain people enough. Eric?
I was wondering if you could talk about the different ways that staff maybe mishandle the calibration plate, because I've had,
Oh yeah.
Tell them to not touch the front of it.
Okay, we have a recommendation. So when you get the calibration plate, please take a wet towel and wipe it down, and then write us to buy a new one. And I get 30% of that, so it's a really good thing. So the calibration plate, that's silk screened currently, and if you touch the silk screen with your fingers, you destroy it. If you clean it, you destroy it. And it's expensive, not just because I would need new tires for my Porsche. I have sold that actually. It is a lot of work to calibrate them. The material, that's just some carbon fiber plate. The target's on this, not the money, but each calibration plate is calibrated on a specific machine, so the data is traceable to the Swiss National Bureau of Standards, and we have coordinates to about 2 micron accuracy on there. Yeah. And you need those 2 microns of accuracy. Why again? Because you want to calibrate something else with this. This must be much more accurate than what you want to get afterwards. Yeah. And that's currently the limit that we can get on there. All right. So I'm showing a lot of PIC today. That's just to explain what can go wrong. So if you cover this here, it will not detect this, and even we couldn't detect it. It's simply mathematically impossible. So if you want to break a PIC, you take an 8 implant model and you make sure that some of these targets get covered, and you will get really lousy results. And we have those results. We never publish them. We have more data about some competitors than I think they have on accuracy testing. The important thing to understand is when you have few targets, we actually have to compute 6 values here. 3 positions and 3 rotations. Each of these gives you 3 equations. And the difference is what we call redundancy. When you have 19 targets here, that value is 9 times higher than with 4. So the many targets help us to find problems here. but it also helps us to get much, much more precise data. I don't like to speak about accuracy. Yeah, accuracy is a complicated matter, and you will see later why. So there's a huge difference here. And you see this with a number of systems here. For example, these guys, they're very interesting because they have black targets on white background, white targets on black ground. They also break the fundamental photogrammetry rule that this is supposed to be flat, because you can see here, this has a completely different shape. And we know that stuff very well because when I started my company, one of the jobs was measuring nuclear power plants, and they have pipes. So we found out how difficult it is to compensate for that. And I don't think they do. And then you have these people here who claim that this is more accurate than this. You see such targets, for example, automotive crash testing. In automotive crash testing, you look at the millimeter range when we look at 50 micron. Yeah, it's simply not accurate. I have never tested it, so I don't know. But I look at statistics. Every photogrammetry company in the world uses such targets. And if you look at every spy satellite in this world is actually measured in a vacuum chamber with photogrammetry. And if it wouldn't work, I think these people would find out. They have very small budgets, to shoot something up there, and they really want to make sure. So this is the method that gives the most accuracy. There are a number of issues. Some of them you can find actually in my PhD. I have a whole chapter about target size, target color, and how you have to do this. Passive fit. You know more about that part than me. We don't really have a good definition of passive fit. I like that definition. Basically, we would like it to be there and touch every surface before we start to screw it down. I'm sure we can make everything fit with enough force, or most of the things fit with enough force, but the definition is before we have force. Now the only question is, what is really good and what is not good? And for this we should try to understand the multi-unit. We actually have the person here who designed the original multi-unit. No? That was you, Fredrik?
I was
in a former life.
Yeah, it was part of it.
Yeah. So the design of the multi-unit is what you do in mechanical engineering. You try to leave space for tolerance stack up. So you would like to have a system that can absorb errors. And we have a lot of scientific papers that test photogrammetry, for example, measuring the outside of the multi-unit and have this as the accuracy of the machine. That's a very good test to see if they actually milled this in the center. Yeah? And that's not in the center. You have mechanical tolerances there. And the biggest issue is actually, we believe that this cam body is actually centered here. It's not centered on here. And I only know one company so far who made a different process, but the typical process that we have to hope that we can center this cam body on here using the screw. And that's where we lose already most of our tolerances. Yeah. So we have a construction where we have up here a cylinder, and we have a relatively tight tolerance, but that's 30 micron, because otherwise it gets too difficult to get it in many occasions, where we hope that the cam body will be somehow centered. The standard deviation of that for an iCam is about 10 microns. So each time you put it on there, it's somewhere else. That means at the end, you need space to absorb that. And many designs used to have around the screw on the final titanium structure 50 micron each side. So if you go all the way across and you push it on one side and you push it on the other side, it gives you 100 micron. And afterwards, you have problems. And that 100 microns is nothing. Why? Because if we have 10 micron here, and you will speak more about this later, we multiply this with 6, so 60 micron can disappear already just in here. Then we have design, we have cam, we have milling, we have sintering, and we have temperature in the mouth. So there's absolutely nothing left. Yeah. So originally we made the design that we have room, but it's actually very, very complicated. It's a little easier vertically because we have a flat surface from turning. We have a flat surface from turning. We put them on and we take them off. We iCam, we see that we get repeatability there of about 2-3 micron. There's some residual roughness in here, but that we can get very good. So in implant direction, we have a chance to be extremely accurate. But there's one very unpleasant problem, and we have addressed that before. We need to get the direction of the implant very, very accurately. And I took an example. If you have across here a 5 micron error, you do your all on 4 where you might have 20 millimeters left to right. This is already 27 micron. So the angle is actually the most critical thing. Now you look at scientific papers in dental, who's checking angles? Just about nobody. And then people who say that an angle of 0.4 degrees is excellent. Do you know what 0.4 degrees is? Even I don't. I actually calculated it. What we do is we have a methodology to analyze the data, and what we say for the angle, we look at the point 10 millimeters away and we express this in micron. And we should be at 5 micron there. And 0.4 degrees is actually 50 micron. And we have some evidence that when you have a 50 micron area that the zirconia structure will break. We had a beautiful case with a micron mapper where things broke and broke and broke. We told them send us 2 data sets. We compared them and we could see that on one implant it was way over 50 micron, and we were lucky that it actually broke on that position. That's not proof that this works, but it's an indication that it might actually be possible that with this we can see that it doesn't work. You give me overtime today in the afternoon? Okay, a few things about precision, accuracy, and trueness. That is here because we have a lot of publications in dental where people speak about trueness. And trueness is truly the only number that you don't need to worry about in dental, because in order to get trueness, you would have to take 100 measurements with your trios and take the average of this, and you don't have the software for that, okay? And you will not do it. So we have precision. Here, it's obvious that it's not so great. This is better. In both cases, we say we write in the center, so trueness would be 0, and then the accuracy would be high. The important thing, the important takeaway here is accuracy will never be better than precision. Never, ever. Yeah, it can. Thank you. It can only get worse. Yeah, that's extremely important, because that means we can do one thing. The simplest test for precision, you repeat the same measurement. Yeah, you throw your darts and you hope to be here, not here. Yeah, when you do this with 90% of the systems on the market, from 2 measurements, you can see if what they claim has any possibility to be okay. So that's really a takeaway from this stuff. The second thing we must understand, we have tolerance stack up, and that is not the reasoning that I have a shitty printer and I will get bad results anyway, so can use bad photogrammetry too. That's exactly the wrong approach. That doesn't work. Tolerance stack up, you can think like a budget. You have $20 to spend, but your printer took already the 18. You have $2 left. And those $2 you need to be within the photogrammetry. Yeah? So because you have a bad system on one end, you really need to be very, very good on that side. And then there's another thing we do in industry. In 1981, Motorola introduced something that's called 6 Sigma fabrication. Yeah. Why does industry do 6 Sigma? Because it saves them a lot of money. That's why they do 6 Sigma. If you do 6 Sigma in dental, at the end of the day, it will save you money because you will have less failures. So 6 Sigma, basically, you might have 3.4 failures in a million. So you look at iPhone, If 3 iPhones out of 1 million are bad, you know the shitstorm they have on social media. Yeah? You know a company called Boeing, huh? They gave up on quality. They used to be one of my clients, and at that time they were the leaders in quality. Yeah? They were the first airline company that bought industrial theodolites for inspection. Of course, it's not a problem, you know. They're all fine, and if an airplane falls down, you will feel safe to sit in the next one. You should ask your clients if one structure breaks in the mouse, if all the others should be great. I don't think so. The psychology will not work though, and the mathematics and the statistics don't work so. And what you can do if you apply this, you say that 20 micron is the biggest gap that we allow. And that comes from the point that if you have something on the model, it gets bigger than 20 micron, you will see it. Now, if your machine has an accuracy, and that's always standard deviation, our terminology, of 20 micron, you will get actually 30% of your structures that will fit. So even with the worst system, you can be lucky, and it will fit. Yeah, it's just like if you go over red light, it's not necessary that you will be dead, but I don't think you will recommend anybody to go over red lights. And if you look at this, to be within 6 sigma, the accuracy of our systems should be 3.3 micron. That's where we should be. And even we are not really there. Yeah, we know from experience, you get better than 5, nobody will complain at you anymore. From our industrial measurement, from our milling centers, and they inspect each structure with a coordinate measurement machine or with an industrial scanner. And they sell those things as medical devices. Yeah? So this is where we should really be. 2 more topics. Then now we'll be quiet. Then you can ask questions and throw tomatoes and then whatever you feel like. We have a lot of papers and everybody claims they know how to analyze systems. What we did is we developed artificial data and introduced errors and then looked at different methods. Do we find them? And the surprise is very bad. Very, very bad. Because even we have a method, what we call spatial fit in X, Y, and Z, and angle fit. And even with that method, we don't see it. And the important thing is to understand that all these methods, they don't really do what's happening in the mouse. Because when we do an S-cell to S-cell fit, the S-cell can go into your multi-unit. Even with our method, we have a single point there, it can go into the multi-unit. So if you use the root mean square error, which is sort of the average error, you're completely off, because you should look at the maximum errors. Yeah? And all these methods are just a testing method. They're not a simulation of what's happening in the mouse. That would be completely different. But we have now, since about 2018, experience with our desktop scanner, and we know the numbers we should meet. Yeah? And that's typically 5 micron for all spatial fit X, Y, spatial fit Z, and the angle fit. Then we know we're okay. The bad surprise here is we introduced the errors, and I will not go through all these beautiful graphics here, but the fundamental thing is that you can see, and I will go to the final table here first. The unpleasant news is, if you test on a 4 implant model and you're lucky, you see that your system is not okay. If you're unlucky, you think your system is okay, but it's absolutely no proof. So that is not good. Yeah? So you can do testing and it looks as if it's okay, but it's in reality not okay. If you do that same thing with these methods on an 8 implant model, you will find the errors. And that is basically the conclusion from there. But there's even worse. I told you at the beginning somebody's using distances. So we computed the distances on the 4 implant model. We know there's a 100 micron error in the position, in Z, and in the angle. And that's what you get when you compute the distances. It all disappears. It doesn't even show up. So if you have a crappy system what you do is you use this method at the top of where you did your measurements, and you will see absolutely nothing. It looks absolutely perfect. You make nice brochures and say, look, we're as good as I can. Yeah? So you have to be really very, very careful. Now, I told you about precision. You shouldn't believe me. I'm just another manufacturer who lies. That should be your approach. You need to test yourself. You need to look at the data yourself, and you can. Because I told you, the accuracy can never be better than the precision. And all you need to do is take 2 measurements. So you can take 2 measurements with any system in the mouse and compare the data. And if you have an iCam, you have the software to do the alignment already, because you can do this with the coordinates of the 2 data sets, and then we currently use a spreadsheet to compute the rest of the parameters. You can see if you're within these values. And that looks, for example, in this case, we did 2 measurements with iCam, 2 measurements with our desktop scanners, and you see the scan bodies here. And we did the same with the Trios, and we're not beating on the Trios. The Trios is for gingiva scanning, one of the machines where we see actually the best results. But this is what comes out. So you have here the difference between those 2 measurements for the iCam or desktop scanner and the Trios, and these are typical numbers that we see. And they tell you, if you look at 5 micron, which is somewhere here, that this will certainly not give you a passive fit. But we know that 80% of the structures people put in a mouse will look as if they fit. Yeah, that's the danger there. So you have a methodology where you can actually test the system and see, and we're buying just about any other photogrammetry. We're testing lots of the horizontal scan bodies, and we know pretty much where what system is. The worst system we have actually ever seen was the IR Connect horizontal scan body. Worst results ever. So they can get a gold medal. They claim that with their solution you don't need photogrammetry. And it's absolutely logical, because if you looked at my scan body here, if we only measure up here and hope to get good results down here, that's a pipe dream. Yeah? They have a long scan body. They measure just in the center and hope to get good results in the outside. That simply does not work. We always think what systems do. We thought what Micromapper did and what other systems did, and then it's always very nice to see that actually what the test results show you is what we thought might happen. Okay? I tortured you enough. Thank you very much. If you have questions, they're welcome. I'll try to answer them as honestly as I can. This was not to tell you that iCam is the greatest. This was really to show you what are all the issues that nobody wants to talk about. There are lots of issues out there that you should be aware of, and you really have to be careful how you do things.
The question that I get from a lot of guys, we follow the protocol exactly how you say it and everything, and we do the stitching in your software of the STL and the bodies. But there's a whole lot of guys out there, and a lot of labs are doing the stitching in ExoCAD.
Yeah.
Right? And what kind of, maybe Mike or you can answer that. How accurate is that then? Because why do it in your software? What's the difference versus doing it in something else?
Yeah.
I think can you also make it clear, because on that scan body, which is kind of funny when people, when they do the scan body vested matching, a lot of designers always just pull the scan body matching so it only matches at the top. And a lot of guys do that, I think, wrongly. Can you explain to the difference that? I think it'll make more clear, and then how your software does it differently.
Yeah. So we say you should go from our software, from Photogrammetry. Photogrammetry doesn't export an STL.
Right.
Photogrammetry computes coordinates. And the CAD software does have a facility to get in with an XML. And if you look at the XML, you will see you have 10 significant numbers. With 10 significant numbers, you will never lose any accuracy in the coordinate systems that we have. Yeah? You can have systems across the Earth where 10 significant numbers are not okay. And I remember that because we fell into this. If you look at exocut and 3Shape on the export, you do have that. And everybody uses this for milling. They have a construct info file, and 3Shape also has an XML file. Why? Because an STL only has 7 to 8 significant numbers, and if you wrote an STL in space, you will always get a different result. That's what it is. There are errors with ICAM and things don't fit. The statistics is 95% of these happen with people who use the change geometry workflow. Why? Because dental technicians are only human and they screw up. That's in our nature. So the best thing we have ever seen, you now have an STL in there that comes from the ICAM and represents the healing caps. And you have the same data from the intraoral scanner. They actually took the data from the intraoral scanner to make the design. And then they claimed, yeah, the ICAM doesn't work. And it took us a long time to find that out. We actually had to go on the computer and follow what they did. And did, of course, like fast, and screw up. That's simply what happens. You can make that process work. We did it. Dentsply uses our desktop scanners, and they had a software where they had to measure STLs. But what we did, we developed an STL and tested it, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000 different cases to make sure nothing goes wrong. The problem is things go wrong. Yeah? And this is simply why we don't like that. Yeah? We go into exocut, into 3Shape with an XML file, and there are guarantee that nothing goes wrong. Even there, people screw up because they start to do alignments in exocut and 3Shape afterwards. And that's basically a bug in exocut and 3Shape. When you come in with an XML file and they do transformations, they don't move that data. So in exocut, you must have everything aligned, and you cannot do any alignment where these coordinates would have to change. If you bring in other data and you bring it to this, nothing happens. So what did we do? We actually developed software we can read the XML file from exocut, from the output, and from 3Shape, and compare it to our original coordinates. Yeah? So we can verify that, because we have seen people, it didn't fit by 2/3 of a millimeter, and it's of course always the ICAM. Yeah, it's basically never the ICAM. The ICAM does not fail, except if you screw up on putting the scan bodies in there. We have people who have breakages. That is true. I only have to look at the statistics from which milling machines and which zirconia we have the breakages. And I'm not going to name the names here, but we know where this comes from. And we have two companies, huge companies, Straumann and Nobel. Straumann has a European center where they mill zirconia structures without tie bases, and Nobel Biocare in the States. There you will never have a failure. And we have a lot of labs who mill. And for example, one lab has a clear statistic. 75% of the cases are ICAM, 0 failures ever. 25% are other machines, and they have failures. And they now even say, okay, we will give you a warranty on data from ICAM. We don't give you a warranty here, and we don't even accept certain data sets, because as usual, when it fails, it's always their fault, and they have to redo it. Yeah? So it goes that far. So over time, we see what happens. Yeah? It's statistics again. And it's simply, that's how it works. So, and we checked the time difference on the design, which takes about 25-30 minutes if they're well prepared. They lose 5 minutes because of our process. Yeah? So 5 minutes of lab time savings and running the risk that the thing will not fit in the mouse, I think we're saving the money on the wrong space. Because a failure in your clinic means you don't have a new patient and you do everything again for free. That's exactly what you want to do to lose money. Yeah? That's exactly what you have to try to get rid of. And that is not, that's for me very astonishing that not all dentists understand that. The biggest problem is failures in your clinic. And the other big issue is a lot of these failures, they don't show up today. They will show up in a few years. Yeah? Errors with the fit don't show up today. They can show up in 3 years, in 5 years, or later. And that's really the catastrophe. So I think we will see from a lot of the other systems today, we'll see a nightmare in a couple of years, because people will use them. I understand that they use them. They want to cut costs. Also, I don't know if I listen to you, you have a couple $1,000 in marketing costs per case, and then you try to save $50 because you want to have a cheaper photogrammetry system. I don't get the logic, but I'm also not American. I'm Swiss, where we want to do everything perfect, and we pay any amount of money to get something perfect. Yeah, the Swiss are very nice clients.
That's what I was telling you earlier. You guys got to do everything the best you can.
Yeah. We simply don't cut corners anywhere. I mean, you saw here, we look at every detail. We spend 1 year to get the perfect scan body. These people are insane, you know, in Switzerland. But we do it, and we try to do the best, squeeze out everything. The same with ICAM. We squeeze out everything that we can. And I must admit, originally, I wanted to get an accuracy of 30 micron with ICAM. Today, we're more towards probably 5. Yeah. Initially, the thought was if we get 30 micron with ICAM, we have 20 micron for milling, we get a 50 micron product instead of a 300 micron product that was traditionally. But we can do much better.
If nobody else has a question, I have one more. I've had the iCam since like first edition, right? So
Yeah.
I've got the 1, 2, whatever. I don't know what you're on right now.
You probably got a 2.
Yeah. So, but what is the difference between the new one and the 2, or 3, or whatever?
Oh, I make more money.
Are the cameras different, or anything else
No.
in there that's
No.
hardware-wise? Anything else?
No.
Just because I'm
We-
just asking because we have both, we use them both, but is one more accurate than the other? For me?
Accurate, I don't think so.
Okay.
The accurate, I don't think so.
Okay.
So we used green light on the one and blue light on the other one
Right.
for a completely different reason.
Okay.
Green light actually has an advantage when you have blood on the scan bodies because it goes through the blood. The blue light doesn't, and that's
noticed
also,
that, yeah.
now you also know why we use blue light. If you want to scan other things that are partially transparent, you need blue light. Yeah. What we really did, we really revamped the complete mechanics, and we revamped basically all the temperature control it and the electronic earthing. Yeah. So from that point of sight, it's a much better design. If you have a 3, you get very nice pre-warmed handles.
Yes.
You don't get that luxury on the 5. So on the 5, we have much better temperature control. We also bring them to a slightly different temperature. So the 3 goes to 35 centigrade and the 5 goes to 37. And we control that much, much better.
Okay.
So the handles are not connected, the bottom is connected, it's really now inside, and it floats inside the housing, so it gets less stress.
But I can still use both of them just to be good to go. Yeah.
Both of them, at the level we are, if we are 5.5 or 4.7 micron, you will not see a difference easily. Yeah.
I'll create the error on the manufacturing probably more than this.
Yeah. What we see is we have done some upgrades. The machine after 3 years starts to get a little bit out of calibration. That's logical, because the calibration that you do only calibrates the relationship of the cameras. It doesn't calibrate the internal geometry between lenses and the cameras. And with enough banging, everything gives over time. The other thing that we see, people do destroy calibration plates. Yeah. And that's something that we're thinking about how we do this, because probably we should recalibrate and recheck everything after 2 years. But that's also something you can do on your own. You should change ICAM bodies, and nobody likes to change them because they're supposedly too expensive, but it costs you about $8 per use. It's really not a big investment. But you put them and you do 2 measurements and you will see that the measurements don't get well. I had a client, they didn't change them and they had bad results, and then we showed them, look, this is it. We had a clinic group that didn't change them, and it came to 300 uses, and we knew from the doctors that had breakages. Yeah. I have Chinese clients, they never want to change them because they don't want to spend any money. And then they call me and say, we have bad results, and then I look how many cases they did. Yeah, sorry, you don't need to call me. When I tell you to change it after 50 and you did 100, don't need to call me about breakages. You're not within the rules. And it's getting worse now because now we have all the FDA, all the European, all the regulatory. We spend a fortune on regulatory. because when Straumann and Nobel sell you a machine, the first thing is regulatory. I think regular cost has cost me $500,000 by now. Yeah, it's just an immense amount of work, and it's important. It's true. It's just also very frustrating. There's no regulatory on shitty scanners. Yeah, so we have regulatory for certain things. We look at certain things, but the input data, there's absolutely nothing. And I understand it's difficult. I wouldn't like to be regulatory, because how do you make those rules? How do you make those laws? How do you make sure that you don't throw out new technology, for example? It's complicated. And who knows industrial metrology when you do dental? You don't. That I do understand it. You have enough things to do, but I don't write about zygomas. Yeah, I don't make publications about zygomas. That's for me. I know I don't know that. I stay with my stuff. So, in one hand, I admire dentists that even take the courage to look at this and do it. On the other hand, sometimes they should simply listen a little bit more and not be KOLs, key opinion leaders, and become known opportunistic liars, because they simply get paid by a company to say certain things, and that's the problem that I see with a lot of the KOLs in your area. That's simply something that's inherent in the industry.
Another difference between the third and fifth generation that our users really like is that it's significantly lighter.
Yeah.
It's lighter, but is it faster on capture rate?
Not
Because we
really.
have both.
I don't think so.
That's your ICAM bodies that you're not buying.
That's right.
Okay,
Oh God.
That's
Well,
true.
the prices of the ICAM bodies have come down. Yes. There used to be $4,000. I think only 3,200, 3,400. 3,400. You see, I don't even know the prices
I'll
anymore.
buy you a drink today.
Yeah, and the price of the ICAM has come drastically down. You know, if you know the history, we started at 23,600. Yeah, and then we went up, and then we went up, and we should have gone up further, because in June 2023, I know that it has a black market value of 65,000. And we know that the clinic uses enough pays for it very, very fast. The market has changed a little bit. We have people who don't do as much, and we have with partners whole programs where basically what should happen is people who don't do the volume, we should call in somebody to do the measurements for them. Yeah, there's all this argumentation. Yeah, you can use OptiSplint, you can do this, and you can do this, and then you simply have failures. Yeah, and we know from history that people who start to do full arch and start to use the technology, that they do more afterwards, because it's easier, less failures, and that's simply the reality. Okay?
So what's going to be changed for ICAM this year? What updates are we getting?
Can we get a better user interface?
That is in the works. That should have been out 3 years ago. It will now actually come out. We know it's shitty.
Okay, good.
We know it's shitty.
It's shitty, but I'm used to it, and I know where to click without thinking.
Yeah.
So don't
No,
change it for me.
the big thing that is coming now is all sorts of ICAM bodies for different implant interfaces. Neodent, for example, the Mini, we have a program with Mike on something exciting there, direct to implant interface. This is really the next thing that's coming.
Yeah, Mike, come on, let's get, do you mind if we get a picture?
Oh, we charge 10 grand for it.
That's okay, you've already charged me 50.
He's gonna buy 2 bodies, right?
You might take a quick photo first. I'll send it to you.
Oh, you said you got,
Easier that way, man.
have you got a decent phone though, or you got
Yeah,
the cheap
yeah.
phone?
Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
All right, Dan, I'll quit being cheap and buy some new ICAM bodies. They're only 40 years old, I mean, come on.
Come on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
How you going?
Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
I do remember him
Yeah.
from Mykonos now.
Yeah. I've met you in Mykonos as well.
Also, yeah, Mykonos, there were simply too many people,
Yeah.
sorry.
Hello, Hong.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Justina.
Okay.
Western Australia.
Ah,
We're all
okay.
from Western
We're all
Australia.
from
Okay.
the same.
Okay.
They're competitors, but friendly
Yeah.
here.
But we all use ICAM.
They all use ICAM, so it's all the ICAM gang, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
How long do you have it?
It's got, we brought
Yeah.
Probably one and a half years.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. You still like it?
Yeah, I like it. I still get some dropouts, but it's okay. We move on.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think it might be my